maritime sector is important to Nigeria's economic survival, yet is riddled with lots of challenges and complications.
Where you have an efficient and effective port, volume of trade goes up.
That is the impact that shipping really creates today. It has been and it still does.
Join us on All Things Maritime, here on Integrity Radio, as we discuss the way forward to improving the efficiency and transparency of the Nigerian maritime sector every Thursday at 12 p.m. on soundcloud.com/integrity-radio. With your host, Faith Onyebujo. Hello and welcome to Integrity Radio. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Faith Onyebujo, your host on the program today. Today on Integrity Radio, All Things Maritime, we are taking a closer look at corruption, regulatory inconsistency, and the worsening cost of port operation. And to help me in this conversation, I have joining me Mr. Kenneth Jukpo, the Managing Editor, News Diet News Blog, and the Assistant SecGen, Maritime Reporters Association of Nigeria, MARAN. You are welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited to be here to discuss and spend this time with you.
Thank you so much. Now, we sort of started the conversation before the program started, looking at corruption. And yes, corruption is very large. Corruption is a word that we've heard quite a number of times. So can you talk to us about, your thoughts on that, particularly, in the maritime sector?
All right. Thank you very much again. I'd like to say a very big thank you for having me. It's really a privilege to discuss the ports. And I'm excited about what you do at CBI because it's actually what Nigeria needs at this time. Corruption, it's not just peculiar to the port, but it goes to show that the port is not left out of what's happening in the country. Mm-hmm. But I have a view, a way I look at corruption or corrupt practices, or when you say someone is corrupt, I always look and say and imagine what actually makes this person corrupt. Mm. Is it the first person to do such a thing? Mm. Why do we have the same issue recurring over and over and over again? Most times, we actually have a system that encourages corruption. The system without checks and balances. We have a system that actually rewards corruption in sort of. Yeah. As we talk about the port, I want to pick. Probably just look at two or three agencies. Mm-hmm. Let's look at MPA, for instance, and customs, because they are very key players in the port system. We talk about customs. In short, one can say customs is synonymous with corruption. That's the perception of most people, which is actually wrong. You have honest customs officers. Mm-hmm. But it's a system that has created that problem. You have a system that first starts from the federal government saying, every year we expect this amount of money to come from customs. So in a way, they've put them under pressure to sort of go all out to justify their offices, to justify their positions, to generate so much money for the government. This pushes them to not to consider trade facilitation, because the idea now is generate revenue at all costs. You have multiple checks, multiple units of customs, for instance. You have those at the ports, officers at the gates, you have officers for valuation, you have officers, multiple officers. Then after all these officers have done their work and you assume that they've cleared the cargoes and they've exited the ports, just a few kilometers or few meters, you have a new crop of custom officers on the roads, the port access roads. They are trying to also do another level of checks again. But the checks really is not the problem. The challenge is that they don't just check. It now becomes a revenue, because there is a revenue drive that those officers outside the port are also seeking to meet. You have Customs Strikes Force, for instance. You have Federal Operations Units. They are not just checking. They are also getting monies. They are also making monies for themselves and for the service. Sometimes you hear them impressively say, we generated, and you think this is supposed to be like a custom police force or a customs, a unit for checks and balance. Mm-hmm. What's there again? Generating money. So it's a system that encourages everyone just going out to get something for his or herself. So instead of saying to address the problem of corruption, we should begin to look at having a system where it will even be difficult to be corrupt in the first place. And one of those ways is to introduce innovation, introduce automation, which is not entirely new. It's happening in other countries. We have single window where if I'm going to import something, I can have a single platform where I log into, I see everything I will need to pay. I don't have to sit with any officer to say how to interpret anything to me. Everything should be clear. If I'm going to pay ₦1,000,000, for instance, and that million naira will go to customs, son, and every other person that is affected with that my transaction, I should be able to pay in that money and they sort out at the back end. It's like someone who is attending a school. Let's use Unilag, for instance. You're paying your school fees, your tuition fee. As you pay everything, you see a breakdown of the fees, but you don't pay it one. Everything is there. Once you pay, it's sorted out. The ones going to the library, the ones responsible for ID card, the ones responsible for the lecturers, everything is sorted. So we should have such kind of systems. And if we do have such kind of systems, there will be no need for human interaction, face-to-face interaction, and there will be no corruption.
Yeah.
So if we can work that out for customs, it will be very beautiful for Nigeria. And again, there's the issue of the revenue. We know Nigeria needs revenue, is very important. But if we de-emphasize and reduce the pressure of generating revenue, which customs actually, the government has put customs under, it would really help the service to realize that they're actually there to facilitate trade, legitimate trade. They are there to facilitate legitimate trade. So if they focus their energy and their attention on facilitating legitimate trade, we'll have a system where there will be more trade. There will be more turnover. There will be more government revenue. So in the long run, we'll generate more, and it's also a big challenge for customs. Also, I'm talking so much about customs, but I think we'll deviate very soon. Customs revenue comes from imports.
Yeah,
imports does no growing nation or no developed nation thrives only on imports. Developed nations thrive on exports.
Yeah.
Exports bring foreign exchange. Export grows the local economy. It grows the production of the nation.
Okay.
It provides jobs.
Yeah.
Imports, on the other hand, doesn't do that. Imports brings in revenue, but it doesn't really grow the nation. So if we have a nation that is planning to grow,
we need to focus on exports.
And exports does not bring money. So Nigeria needs to get its priority right. The government needs, beyond customs and beyond, is a system thing. What do we actually want to do? How do we achieve it? Talk about automation. Customs actually started something beautiful, which, although there are also issues, I don't know if we would like to delve into it, the e-customs. And then we're talking about automation. But instead of outsourcing it to China or to another country, can we do it in-house? Customs, as much as we want to generate revenue, we're also looking at national security. We have them at the border ports. We are concerned about the security of the nation.
Yet we were not careful with our in-house security.
Yeah, so if we look at the whole thing, it's a system. We really need to look at our system. We look at automation. We look at our priorities. If we are going to be imports, how long? What's the future of Nigeria if we keep importing? If we keep saying, okay, this customs agreement that we've entered, a 20-year plan that will give over 176 billion dollars, a 20-year plan, and when you break it down, it gives about 8.8 billion every year. That money is coming from imports. At what costs? If we focus this much on it, are we doing something to justify exports also? Because if all the attention is on imports, in the next 20 years, how bad will the poverty line of Nigeria be? We are already said to be the poverty capital of the world. In 20 years' time, are we going to set a landmark as to the worst poverty? It's just scary. So we really need to know what we want to do and how we go about it. That's just one for customs. Then we look at corruption also. It's not just customs. We have the Nigerian Ports Authority, who is the landlord of the ports. And then several years ago, they concessioned the ports to terminal operators. Some of them have their lease expired, and then there are challenges. But let's just look at MPA as it stands now, and the challenge with MPA. MPA entered a concession with terminal operators. At that time, there was no referee. So it was two people, just myself and you, going into a business, and there's no one to draw the line. So along the line, there were conflicts. And during findings showed that the major challenge was that there was no one to draw the line between both parties. So MPA was the government's representative on one hand, and also sort of regulating it's like being a judge and a lawyer in a case that you have an interest, or being a referee and a player. in a football game or something. So it became a huge challenge, and then there was need to have a port economic regulator. Shippers Council came on board, but that structure is not really clean, because a good system should have an independent regulator. There's something I was reading today, just to draw a reference. In the communication system, we have the NCC, and the NCC, if you check on their website, the function is very the goal of the NCC is very clear. It says on the website there that it's a commission, is the independent national regulatory authority for the telecommunication industry in Nigeria. So it's clear. It's not a player. It's an independent national regulatory authority. So you have Shippers Council. Shippers Council cannot claim to be an independent regulatory authority in the transport sector or even in the maritime sector, because there is even no law backing it. But even if Shippers Council wants to do that, it's that they are more like sister agencies.
Okay.
You really can't oversee MPA. Mm-hmm. So it's a challenge, a huge burden on Shippers Council. So there's still that lacuna, that independent regulatory agency, either for port sector or for the entire transport sector, is missing. It's not there. Shippers Council is trying to get laws to back it, but at the moment it's not there. Even the terminal operators are riding on this. They've gone to the courts to challenge. When Shippers Council don't do the road to say, you really don't have powers to do so. And the case has gone from High Court to Court of Appeal. Today is even pending at the Supreme Court. So you see, it's a system where, because of that issue, there's opportunity for people to do things and get away with it. We have, as a result of the challenge in that concession and everything, we have concessionaires who are increasing their charges every time, and then you have to drag them to reduce it. But there's really nobody that has the power to do so. That's why Shippers Council came in as port economic, but there's no law giving them that power. So they are using persuasion, using engagement, because they really don't have a law to give them such kind of powers. And then you look at MPA. MPA is a landlord, and you say someone should pay rent for your house, yet the house is leaking, there is no light, or there is even no pole to have light. So there are lots of issues, and these issues are what encourages people to do things and assume that they will get away with it. So if you say, for instance, in Calabar, there's a major issue in Calabar. In Calabar, the concessionaires got in, and they got into the concession with the projections that they will have over 9 meters deep draft. That means vessels that are up to 9 meters can come in there. But there were issues they have dredging issues.
Dredging.
The kind of waters they have.
Yeah.
There. So throughout the time of the concession, the water has never been deeper than 6 meters.
Oh.
So they have dredging challenge. You need to dredge that place regularly. So if they never had that 9 meters, meaning the kind of vessels they expected they would get could never come there. But MPA will collect the monies that they expected to collect.
Whoa!
So it's a major issue. They even bought equipment that they were never able to. They will never be able to use, because the system, the water channel is shallow. It can't take the kind of vessels they expected. So now, who do they cry to? MPA is a regulator. MPA is like the government, and MPA is a regulator. So, and there's a level to which you can fight in such an environment. So there's need to really answer these questions. The good thing is that there are some efforts to address them. We have the National Transport Commission, which came up, but it has not seen the light of day. It rose to the table of the president. It was not assented. Even now, it's still there. That National Transport Commission should provide some level of clarity for the transport sector. The commission will be independent. You will not have a stake. Everybody will play. Then the commission will say, okay, you have people to say, okay, look at these issues of cost and pricing. For instance, MPA can regulate, can say, we are going to charge this for terminal operators. That's like a regulation. That's like a fee. That's charges. So who regulates MPA's charges? Shippers Council cannot do that. You cannot regulate MPA's charges. You need an independent national regulatory body for the transport sector that can say, oh, MPA, this thing is too much for so and so reasons. So these are just holes that encourages corruption, encourages people to do things and get away with it. And in the long run, it will affect the entirety of Nigerians, because the services, shipping services, a lot of things in Nigeria are imported, and it's going to tell. When you say the price of this in Nigeria is higher than somewhere else, you understand why. The maritime sector also has challenges with security in some areas, like in Port Harcourt, and then importing to Port Harcourt although it's getting better. It's getting better at the moment. So, but these are issues that if you have that should be addressed. But it would be nice to have a holistic approach, and then we can't really blame someone in any of the systems for being corrupt, because it's a system that encourages it. If you have a system for customs where there's no need to sit with an officer, I just sit in my room and then I log into customs portal and I see the exact amount I'm to pay, and the same thing with other agencies too. For SON, for NAVDAC, depending on the product I'm importing, I'll be able to pay everything I need to pay. It would be nice. Then we talk about the road networks too to the ports. They are in very dilapidated states. And of course, it's the government, not just MPA, but also the government. And you can't expect terminal operators to function very well in a system where the roads are not good. We talk about power. Most of them power their facilities.
Sadly.
So it's a whole lot. And of course, when they do all that, they begin to look for ways to justify whatever they do. The additional charges they collect, the ways they go about extorting freight agents and importers. You can have something imported and then have you ever boarded a bus maybe to one part of the country, and then you look at the tickets that you are given? You see there are some small stuff that are written. They are always very tiny. Those are the conditions for having refund of your money. It's always very tiny.
We don't bother with this.
That's the way they smuggle in some tiny amounts into the bill of lading for agents. So you just find some strange monies popping up, like container cleaning charges. You see port charges. A terminal operator is charging port charges, and then shipping lines also trying to smuggle in such kind of charges into there. So all these things come up because they are trying to generate money to justify other areas where they are suffering. So it's a whole lot of challenges, and it's in such a system. It's only normal that corruption will thrive, and so we have a system that actually celebrates and rewards corruption.
Unfortunately.
So it's a whole lot.
It's been said that also another issue we have is the policy inconsistency, that it is the bane of the maritime industry. You want to comment on this? Okay.
I would like it would be nice if I could have some policy. I have what I have in my mind.
Go ahead. Go. Okay. Use the ones you have.
Okay. Let's look at change in governments, change in administrations, and then how it affects businesses. You could have an administration today who has said, okay, let's do this business this way, or even enter into concession agreements. And then you have a change in administration. The contract entered earlier would have been like a 20-year plan, a 10-year plan, but the administration is a 4 years administration. So after 4 years, in some instances, we've had cases where a new administration comes in and then nullifies what has been entered before.
Exactly.
So it then kills the confidence of the private sector in going into such kind of partnership. And we are in a time in the country where we actually need PPPs for major projects. We talk about roads, we're talking about PPPs, let's look at the Lagos Badagry. There is this trade fair complex there. There was a 25-year agreement with the concessionaire that was revoked during the first administration of this current during the first 4 years of the Buhari's administration. It was revoked and they were in court, and today they've been pushed out. But it was a contract that was entered 25. I don't have the full details who did what and why they should have been revoked, but it's a consign. If people look at it and discover that they can actually go into business with a country, go into an agreement with a country that can actually revoke it at any time. Even a statement was attributed to the MD of MPA recently, where he said, if terminal operators don't do this, we will refuse to give them their licenses. But I did my research and I found that there is a clause, there are conditions for renewing licenses of terminal operators. If they've met those conditions, you have to reduce. Because you cannot say, because you do this, I'm going to revoke. So it shows you the kind of environment they operate in. So you have operators that are actually
weary.
Yes, they are weary of the environment. Some of them begin to focus more on politics, on fraternizing with those in authority than actually doing the main job. We should have a system where people have confidence in it. I should not have a contract with the government and be scared that in the next 3 or 4 years, this administration leaves and I'm not even sure my contract will still be honored. So it's really a huge concern.
I think that's not just unique to the maritime sector. It seems to be a Nigerian
thing.
Nigerian problem.
It's bad.
It's crazy. It's not just bad. It's crazy. One of the things we said we were going to also look at is the cost of port operations going on right now. I mean, with congestion and everything,
True.
can you talk to us about that?
Okay, cost of port operations. There are two ways. There are unknown charges.
Oh, yes.
They are the known charges. Then there are the unreceipted payments.
Yes.
So if you talk about the known charges, Nigeria may not be faring too badly when you look at the known charges. But the unreceipted charges, the ones that are collected without receipts, that's a very big one. A very big problem. Then we have an environment also.
Yeah.
When we say we're talking about the cost of using Nigerian ports, we look at, let's break it down to someone trying to import a 20-foot container from China or from UK to Nigeria, and then you have the container coming, and production, that chain is not complete until the goods get to the warehouse of the importer. Okay. So you've imported probably at $1,500 to bring that 20-foot container down to the Apapa port, and now you want to take it from there to maybe to the east or to the far west. You find that the cost of having that your container come out, legitimately you've paid your dues. You are still going to pay the custom officers that are on the road. You're going to pay, for instance, FOU, the strike force. They're going to, because we have a system where you do not have a clear customs duty that is tenable anywhere. So this is the duty. I've paid the legitimate customs duty. Mm-hmm. There are lots of arbitrariness. So you have someone telling you that you actually paid this, but you say this thing you imported is a glass. But this kind of glass from this kind of place is not supposed to be like this because there is no clear system. So you find yourself paying on the road. You find yourself paying additional charges. You find yourself, let's say you use a container to import that particular consignment. You are supposed to pay container deposits. You find yourself in a challenge with the shipping companies because now you've paid your container deposits just to bring that container out. And when you return the container, you're supposed to get a refund, container refund. Mm-hmm. And you can't get that refund in 90 days because the shipping company tells you one story or another. The shipping company doesn't have where to keep your container. Let's say you bring your container back to Tinkan and they tell you at Tinkan there's no space. Take it to so-and-so terminal in Festac, in Agor, in Badagry, on Badagry Expressway. And you go there and you're asked to pay again to drop a container that you're actually planning to return to the owner because it's not your property. Mm. So you find that and there is traffic. While you are running around trying to return your empty container, you even
That's a nightmare.
You lose the whole. So these are additional charges that are not in the books. If you say what's the cost of import, let's say customs gives you procedures. These are the steps to import. These additional payments are not in those steps. So it doesn't show, but it actually tells because the importer is going to factor the charge that the extra charges paid to the customs, the tax force on the roads, the extra charges collected by shipping companies after import was concluded, which is the container deposit refund that never came back. The importer is going to capture the cost of haulage. When the roads are free and in good state. And we don't have the crisis that we have in the fuel and petrol issues, the cost of haulage will be cheaper. The higher cost of haulage is going to reflect on the entire cost of import, and it's going to reflect on the final cost of that price of that goods sold in the market. So it's one thing to say Nigerians' cost is this thing, is this amount, but the additional unseen costs. You pass through some local governments while you are carrying a container, and you pay people dressed in local government colors, legitimate local government officers collecting money on behalf of the local government. You ask for what? So there are lots of these issues are there, and it's a long chain. It's a long chain, and then we have vessel turnaround time, and we have currently if you have to import something into Nigeria is seen. Is erroneous, Nemasa would say, but Nigeria is seen as a war risk zone, what it means that is a threat to come into Nigerian waters for threats of pirates. Yes. So that is also an extra charge that everybody importing into Nigeria pays. So So if you're going to import something into Nigeria, it's coming from anywhere. The ship owner bringing something into Nigeria pays an extra war risk insurance premium. So that insurance premium is going for coming into Nigeria is going to charge the importer or the ship charterer that is coming into Nigerian waters.
Yep.
That person is going to charge the shipper. The shipper is going to put that money on Nigeria. So these are costs that when we analyze it, so it's not easy. It will be a thorough job to actually look at this and then say this is the cost of importing, and it's actually more when you add all these additional costs. And then the situation at the port access road, the corruption in the ports and the delays in the ports also have a way of affecting the number of time that the vessels spend on the seaside.
Yeah.
So they call it vessel turnaround time. In Nigeria currently, according to the MPA, Lagos ports, ships spend about 11 days before they finish offloading, and if they're going to take empties, they take empties and leave. They spend about 11 days. In other countries, especially in the competitors, in Tema, that's Ghana, in Cotonou, and in Togo, Lomé, the average is between 5 to 6 days. So if a ship is going to spend 5 to 6 days in neighboring countries, which, by the way, have deeper ports than Nigeria, they will find it more convenient to go there and dump Nigerian goods there, or go there and drop Nigerian goods, do S2S for vessels that are bringing to Nigeria. So these are also additional, because the ship has planned to spend to visit 12 ports or 40 ports in a year, and then you have one particular port where it spends additional 4 or 5 days.
That's extra cost.
That's extra cost.
Yeah.
So that extra cost is going to be, it's not free. That extra cost is still, they'll find a way of imputing it into goods coming to that place where there are extra costs. You understand? So when we say things it's expensive to import to Nigeria, vis-a-vis other countries, these are small problems that have a way of really making things worse. The Nigerian Shippers Council will fight and say, there's no need to charge us this, there's no need to charge us this. But when you look at it, these charges are not just coming out of nowhere. They are justifiable, although they take advantage of it. They take advantage of it to slam high charges, but they're actually justifiable. Okay. So the cost of importing to Nigeria is really high. One can argue on paper that it's not really high because this is what it takes. But besides what's in the books, there are additional charges and there are
so mainly because of the additional charges,
yes,
the cost of
and conditions too.
Okay. Now, stakeholders have warned that let's take a look at the election coming up. Stakeholders have warned that the pre-election year would worsen challenges, especially in the supply chain industry, and that we may not see relief in that until the end of 2023, which is the end of the political year. Okay. I've
observed in a pre-election year, in the last, I think I've witnessed business in pre-election year for about 3 pre-election years. And then one of the major things I've observed is that investors are unwilling to put in funds into across most sectors because of what we discussed earlier, the uncertainties. Not that they are scared of a war, but they are scared of change in policies, which is very frequent in Nigeria. They are scared of these policy inconsistencies. So they kind of like hold their monies. They hold their monies. Even importers also. Yeah. Kind of they're like wary of what's going to happen, the uncertainty, and politicians most times they talk tough during this, so people really want to watch. So it has a way of, since there are few imports, there are few investors. I think I'm not very sure, but I think FDIs, foreign direct investment, during this period will actually be low because they want to see it's a different thing where you're even expecting you're expecting maybe continuity in governance. For this case we're having is most likely definitely going to be a new president. Yeah, so even if it's the same party, it's going to be a new president who might come up with new ideas, new policies. So it has a way of spilling into not just logistics and supply chain sector. Every other sector is going to be watching to see what's going to come up. Is it really going to be a good investment to go into such kind of things? For instance, look at Lagos. Up till 3-4 years ago, it was a good Lagos population, over 20 million people. People have to move. So the motorcycles, the tricycles, they all have to move. But under this administration, we hear that Lagos plan, that such kind of vehicles are not in Lagos transport master plan. That master plan has been there all these years, but we just have an administration that is really ready to see to it, and saying this is banned. So it's not surprising to find that investment, business activities will dwindle, imports will dwindle at such pre-election years, and probably until the first 6 months of next year, when we say things, the first 6 months after the new administration, where there will be like a direction, a focus for the country.
It's it's quite interesting. It just seems like the sector is riddled with a lot of challenges, a lot of shortcomings, and everything. So tell me, with everything we have outlined, the seeming gloomy drawbacks, what would you say is a way forward in all of these?
I would say, let's look at the customs. They are low-hanging fruits. We talked about automation, we talked about single window. And these are issues that have been discussed. Interestingly, most of these issues have been discussed at several fora, but they challenge the political will to get them done. So if we have a single window where Nigerian Customs, SON, every agency there's a platform, probably should be an independent platform, where other agencies are incorporated. We have a single window where everyone can see what is to be paid for an import. What is the process for an export? Conclusive document or a conclusive portal where, if I pay this amount, XYZ, I'm done with customs, I'm done with SON, I'm done with NAFDAC, depending on the kind of product I'm importing. If you have such, what we've done is that we've taken away the opportunities for human contacts, the most of the opportunities for corruption. If we've done that, we've addressed that challenge. Then, for MPA and other issues as it affects regulation, it would be nice to have a master plan, a clear plan, or a transport policy. So that tells us where we are going to be in the next 2 years, in the next 10 years, in the next 15 years. It's a structure that it should be developed by private sector players, the academia, the experts. We can even bring in other experts from other countries, experts in such fields, to develop it for us. Then there's a need to have a transport commission. We say to tell us who does what and how. Someone who gives licenses shouldn't also be a regulator, because you're setting rates. Mm-hmm. So you cannot be setting rates, giving license, and then be regulating the person you're setting rates for. Because there are some level of expectations on your part. Who measures your own expectation? Who tells MPA that these ports that you've given us for is beginning to, there are holes, the ports are collapsing and Tinkan? Who is going to measure their own, living up to their own standard? Who is going to hold MPA accountable when there are no lights? Who is going to hold the government accountable for bad port access roads, which have a way of affecting the functionality of the seaport terminals? So there's a need to have a transport commission who can oversee, without having its own interest in the whole thing. So the first one, we need to have a single window. Mm-hmm. The other one, we need to have a national transport commission. Break down
when you say single window.
A single window should be a platform, an online platform, where someone can see everything that has to be paid for an import or for an export. Just like you're going to pay a school fees, you just access your school portal. You click the portal, you see tuition, you see other charges, everything embedded into a single fee. You pay that fee, you don't bother about going to pay library or pay, everything is sorted in that payment. So once you can make that payment, and it should be clear, it should be open to everybody. It should be developed in a way where everybody has an interest. People can make inputs while it's being developed, so that we don't have something developed and in the next 3, 4, 6 months, people say this was not captured. So then it's no longer a single window. Should have all stakeholders making inputs in developing that online portal or single platform, whatever we call it. It should just be a one-stop shop for payments. So once you pay that, you don't need anybody on the road. Then probably there will be need for scanners, because customs will tell you that there is need to, people make mistakes or people could be corrupt. So if you have a scanner at the port and it's scanned and told you that this thing that is in the container is chocolate, you can be very sure that you won't come out of the port and discover that it's gingerbread or something else. So if you have scanners at the port, also we'll take away the burden of customs. Have a lot to do. Instead of standing on the road, they have porous borders where we can deploy them and other gainful, innovative things they can do to enhance operations, trade facilitation. So we can take away that burden of having to manually check. We didn't talk about how that even affects cost. When you manually check a container, if you scan a container in a few seconds or minutes,
You're
but if
done.
you manually check,
It's longer.
It adds to the costs. So if we could have scanners, we could have a single window. The problem with customs and then the delays at the port will be reduced. Then we also need to talk about infrastructure, port roads. Do we need to tow them? Do we need to do PPP? Can we guarantee people that they invest in the roads for 7 years? If they have a 10-year lease or 15-year agreement, in 7 years' time, a new government will not come and say, you've made enough money, stop it. Can we explore such kind of alternatives and also guarantee people that come in that their investments will be safe, they'll be able to get their return on their investments. So I think single window, scanners, a National Transport Commission that can oversee these overlapping functions or overbearing agencies will be needed. Then in a transport master plan, that means where are we going to be in the next 10, 20, 30 years? Where are we going to be? We're talking about Lekki deep support, Badagry deep support, Ibaka deep support, Ibom deep support is also Ibaka. So we're looking at this is the way to go, because Nigerian ports are actually shallow compared to our neighboring ports. Beyond being shallow, we're also more expensive. Beyond being expensive, we also have bad infrastructure. So the only advantage we have is that we have population.
That's it.
So last time people come here.
That the demand is.
The demand.
That's it.
But beyond that, when the pressure becomes too much, people find a way of taking it to the neighboring ports and then smuggling it into the country either through the borders or through S2S unapproved means. So we need to address these issues and not just assume that because we are big, we will just keep being up there.
Yeah. So let me throw this in because you talked about the single window. MACN in partnership with CBI, Convention on Business Integrity, they've done quite a lot in terms of sanitizing, that area and streamlining things, starting with the SOP, the standard operating process, and then the help desk. I would like you to maybe comment on this and so far, the impact you think it's had.
Okay, that's beautiful, but I really don't know much about it.
Oh, okay.
I really don't know much about it. I know something Shippers Council started with other agencies. They call it the MPPM, Nigerian Ports Process Manual.
Yes.
But it's a document. It's like an advisory document. It's not
which is supposed to help in
it helps
sensitizing.
It helps in sensitizing. But what we're talking about now, it's a single platform. If you're going to pay your school fees in any school in Nigeria, you click it. I don't think you pay library, pay money for lecturers, pay this. You just pay a fee. Everybody gets theirs. They sort out themselves. It's the same country. It's not like Nigeria, Ghana are sharing the money. All these agencies are agencies of Nigerian government. So if you're going to pay customs, you pay customs, pay everything in one portal. You can do it. It's doable. It's happening in other countries.
So, but that would mean an intra-agency cooperation.
Yes. That's happening to an extent now. Over the years, we've seen people fight over space, but I think right now we're having some sort of partnership like never before. NDLA Customs, NDLA SON, they are really partnering. Then we have joint vessel inspection, which I think Shippers Council and some other agencies, MP and others, are actually doing. These are good. They are innovations that are actually helping. But if you have a single one thing, at least for the payments, for the fee, you're paying, and it takes away corruption. Since one of the goals of your organization is to minimize or eradicate corruption. If you have a single platform, I'm going to pay this, I pay it. I know that every other issue, if it's an issue of integrity as to whether what I said I imported is the main thing, scanners solves that. You understand? So.
Okay. Well, that's the most time would allow us to take right now.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming in, Mr. Kenneth Jukpo, Managing Editor, the News blog, and the Assistant Secretary General Maritime Reporters Association of Nigeria, MARAN, for coming in today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank
you very much.
Well, thank you so much for listening. Please feel free to comment, like, share, and be part of this conversation. Bad things happen only when we stay silent. So we need to not stay silent. We need to keep speaking up and keep pushing this message of integrity until we get the results that we're looking forward to. And that's all we can take. My name is Faith Onyebujo. I've been your host on this program. Thank you for listening. This is Integrity Radio. Have a beautiful day. Bye-bye.
You're listening to Integrity Radio. This is Integrity Radio, bringing you interesting insights and discussions around embracing a Nigeria that prefers integrity over corruption. With your host, Faith Onyebujo. Integrity Radio, shining a light to a better Nigeria.